I'm really pleased to bring out our next speaker. We have Mayor Francis Suarez. Miami was recently described as the most important city in America by the Financial Times. I'd like to welcome Mayor Suarez of the Magic City and the capital of capital for this keynote.
Good morning. How's everyone doing today? Not enough Cuban coffee, huh? We got to switch out to Starbucks for Versailles Cuban coffee. Okay, so I was going to do the usual podium thing. I decided to scrap that. And today's a beautiful day, and it's Monday. So I'm feeling kind of energetic, and I want to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask each and every one of you right now to close your eyes. Close your eyes. Okay. Now, I'm going to describe a city in America, and I want you to think in your mind what city I'm describing. So the city I'm describing is #1 in the nation for tech job growth. It's #1 in the nation for tech job migration. The city I'm describing has an unemployment rate of 1.4%. The city I'm describing, according to PitchBook, grew 200% in venture capital deals completed year over year. Its homicide rate went down by 23% last year, and this year its homicide rate is down by almost 50%. The city I'm describing, a little bit more volume there. The city I'm describing was ranked the happiest city in America, the healthiest city in America, and #1 in pandemic recovery. The city I'm describing has the lowest homicide rate since the 1950s, the lowest tax rate since the 1960s, and the lowest homeless rate since 2013. And the city I'm describing just recently put out a plan to be the first major urban city in America to have 0 homeless. You can open your eyes now. Was the city that I was describing, in your mind, the city that you're sitting in right now, the city of Miami? It's an interesting little exercise to see how quickly and how disruptive this world has become, how the gravitational center of the world is shifting so rapidly. And so the logical question that I would be asking myself if I were just opening my eyes and sitting, listening to me is, well, Mr. Mayor, how did you do it? How did it become all these things? Why is Greenwich here? Why is Milken here? Why is Aspen here? Why are all these incredible think tanks that were dispersed across the country all coming here? What's so special about this city? And it's not just the weather, although that is pretty special. I was speaking to the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce, who asked me to talk about this Miami movement, and I said, there are many things that I can help you do. I can't change your weather, okay? I was talking to Tampa, and they were asking me, and I said, there's a lot of things that I could do, Tampa. You got pretty good weather, too. So it's not just the weather. What we've done in this city is we've followed 3 simple rules for success that frankly can be done by any city in America, and not only can be done, should be done by every city in America. And I've been very blessed as mayor to be selected by my colleague mayors as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So now I see it as my duty, my obligation, to not just do it in my city, but to do it across this country. So you see, 85% of the population of America is in American cities, and 91% of our GDP in this country comes from American cities. So if we get our cities ahead of this disruptive tsunami that we see coming generationally, our country will have a generation worth of prosperity. That's my thesis. And so how do we do it? It's not that complicated. I do it by following 3 simple rules. The first rule is you keep taxes as low as humanly possible. Why is that important? You think you need resources to do things. Doesn't reducing taxes reduce your resources? It's actually quite the opposite. We lowered taxes and have continued to lower taxes to 1960s low. And guess what's happened to our revenue? It's doubled in size. I have the biggest budget that I've had in the last 10 years. I have the best credit rating that we've ever had in our history. And I have $150 million in my savings account. We have a $20 million surplus this year alone. So what do we do with all those resources? That's point number 2. We invest in quality of life. Quality of life puts a premium on the most important thing you have in your life. It's not what's in your bank account. It's not how much crypto you have. Okay, it's your time. It's the only finite commodity you can't make more of, and it's the only finite commodity that the wealthiest people in the world share with you. And so how do we do that? How do we put a premium on time? How does the city put a premium on time and quality of life? Well, you focus on the things that people care about. You want to make the city safe. So we've increased funding for our police. Now it's a bipartisan issue as of like 2 weeks ago, right? You increase funding for your police. We have the most police officers we've ever had, and as I said, a declining homicide rate. You focus on parks. We spent $100 million on a linear park called the Underline that'll rival the High Line in New York, the Beltway in Atlanta, and Millennium Park in Chicago. You focus on culture. Everybody wants to be in a place that you can be entertained in. So we have all these incredible conferences. Thank you very much, Greenwich. We have incredible museums like the one that we're in right now that we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on. We have one of the most incredible art fairs in the world, which is becoming now a tech conference in Art Basel. And we're the only city in the world, not in America, in the world, that has all the major sports and Formula One beginning this year in May. So all of the societal offerings that one could ever expect in a city, we have them right here. So we've reduced taxes, we've leaned into quality of life initiatives. And the last thing we've done is we've leaned into this innovation economy. We know that our world is more disruptive than it's ever been, and that the rate of disruption is increasing exponentially. So cities have 2 choices. It's that simple. And the good news is that we're living in a world that's decentralized. So it's not necessarily a zero-sum game as it's been up until this point. Cities can run from that disruption, run from that dislocation, or they can run towards it. I often say that it's a tsunami of opportunity, and people do 2 things when they see a tsunami, most of the time. The first is they run for cover. They hide. They find the safest place that they can get to. The second thing that they do is they get their surfboard out. And that's what we've done. We've gotten our surfboard out because as a young mayor of a major city with 2 small kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, I was amazed when my little daughter used her pacifier to take a selfie of herself. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is the moment where I realized that technology is going to permeate every single facet of our life. It is inescapable. And if we don't build our economy around that fact, we are going to be disrupted out of existence. You see, in Miami, we're fundamentally free market. We're free market, but we're also compassionate. We care about the least, the last, and the lost. And we understand that we have an obligation, a moral obligation, to do what we can to make sure that everybody in our city can be successful. We call that Miami for everyone. And we also understand that there are climatic factors that we have to be responsive to. And we've dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars in resources to be the most climatically resilient city on the planet. Many of you don't know that Miami has actually suffered less hurricane damage in the last 10 years than New York City. How many of you knew that? And that's why we're not only Miami for everyone, we're Miami forever. We want to be a city that your grandchildren's grandchildren can enjoy. We understand that decisions that we make today are going to influence a generation. And we think this is a pivotal moment. We think this is a generational inflection point. And we have choices. Every city has choices. This country has choices. Do we lean into that opportunity or do we run away from it? Miami is leaning in, and that's why I think you're all here. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has questions. Nobody's prompting me to do anything, so I'm not running. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Plan for public transportation. Do nothing. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, interestingly, and I joke a little bit about that, but there's some truth to that, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I was looking at a tweet from last week, and the person who was tweeting it was articulating some statistics around remote work. And one of the statistics that the author explained, or the one that caught my attention, was we've saved so much time in transportation through remote work that it is the equivalent in 1 year of 23,000 lifetimes. 23,000 lifetimes is the amount of time that we've saved. Why do I say that? Why is that an answer to your question? The answer is our world is disrupting, and our private sector is solving a lot of these problems that were customarily public sector problems, right? Usually, the public sector would be asked, how do you solve public transportation? What is the private sector doing? Well, they've created this technology that allows people to work from home. That's one. Number two, micro-mobility. When you see scooters, I mean, any city that you go to, you're gonna see last mile solutions where people can get on scooters very inexpensively, very effectively, and get from one place to the other if it's a last mile solution. Number three, cities are developing, the way they're developing their planning systems is what we call 15-minute walkable cities. We're ranked #1 in the nation in 15-minute walkable cities. What does that mean? That means that within a city, you're seeing little cities develop that you can do everything in, and that you do it within a 15-minute walkable radius. Hey, Mike, good to see you. You can walk from your house to your work. You can walk from your house to the bagel shop. You can walk from your house to the bar, and you can do everything within a 15-minute walkable radius. So the private sector has disrupted where the public sector has demonstrated an incapability of solving the problem. Where do I think is the public sector's realm? I think there's two things. I think we have to stop trying to solve today's problems with yesterday's technology. That's just my humble perspective. So I'm looking at two specific technologies. One of them is urban air mobility, autonomous air vehicles that are electric, that will get you from a decentralized set of garages, for example, municipal garages throughout the city, so that those will be takeoff points and landing points. The other thing I'm looking at is the boring company and boring technology, so you can go underground at a fraction of the cost. If you look at underground subway in a city like New York, it's $2 billion a mile. Well, the boring company claims they're doing it at $10 million a mile. So that is a 200-to-1 disruption, right? And so we're looking at that very actively. They did it already successfully in Las Vegas. They already have 2 solicitations, one in Fort Lauderdale, the other one in North Miami. And we're looking at a comprehensive intra-city transit system that would be underground, assuming that it's feasible and inexpensive enough. Yes, sir. Sure. Affordable housing. So affordable housing is an urban problem, right? And now you have gaslit that problem with historic inflation. You have inflation that it's even hard to determine what effect it's had on the housing market because the CPI doesn't take into account housing costs. So if you got 8% inflation, which is a 40-year high, you can assume you got 20 to 25% housing inflation, right? Those are the articles that I've seen, the statistics we've seen. In Miami, it's closer to 35, 40, right? It's actually, we're probably one of the highest inflated rental markets in the country. Why? Because you've thrown on top of that massive demand, right? The good news for Miami is two things. One is we have supply capacity. Many large cities in America do not have supply capacity. So to put some context to that, we have 185,000 dwelling units in the city, and we have in our development pipeline right now 47,000 units in the development pipeline. That's about a 25% increase in supply over a 2 to 4 year period. So we have the ability to maintain supply, which should keep costs down. We are still relatively inexpensive compared to New York. The median household price in Miami is about $500,000. The median household price in New York is about $1 million. So it's still a 2-to-1 differential. Obviously, cost of living and taxes are significantly higher up north and out west than they are here. The second thing is we're actually doing something about it. We passed a bond, a voter-approved bond, to dedicate $100 million in funds to produce affordable housing projects. We've done that as a public-private partnership because public housing in the 60s and 70s and 50s is awful, right? The public-private partnerships that we're seeing now are giving you very, very good quality housing stock at a very affordable price for a very long period of time. And so they have fitness centers, they have community centers. I mean, all the things that you would expect in a high-end building. And we're seeing 15 to 1, 20 to 1, 25 to 1 leverage rates. So for every dollar we put in, we're seeing 15 to 20 to 25 in the private sector capital stack to match that $1. So we're getting a tremendous leverage rate from the funds that we're doing. We've done about 150 million going into this moment. We have another 100. And I would say if we're smart, and I always say if because you never know, you have a $200 to $300 million additional fund that's coming if we extend our community redevelopment agencies that can produce about 200 to 300 million. So those are decisions that are yet to be made, but the horizon from a supply perspective and from a dedication of resources perspective, for me, is probably the best in the country, objectively. Yes. Yeah. Sure. Healthcare and education. So I'm going to start with education, if that's okay. I think education is the fundamental equalizer in society. And I think we as a society, not just as a city, this is a bigger, broader argument, discussion. We should be pouring resources into education as much as we can, almost until the point where it hurts. That's how I feel. Because I think it's the only way, if you're born into a different circumstance, or if you don't have the network that I had growing up, it's the only way for someone to have an opportunity to catch up, right? To have an equivalent education. And it's really it's a fundamental purview of government. We've never doubted that. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of things that we talk about that we wonder if it's in the competency of government, right? But education is squarely within the purview of government and something that we should be focused on. So we're trying to think outside of the box. As a city, we don't have an educational system. It's an independent entity, so we've tried to hack our way into it. And our hack has been charter schools. We've hacked our way in through charter schools. We've worked with a community college, which is the largest community college in the country. And we created a tech charter school to fill the tech jobs that we're creating, and where the students who will go for free, no matter where they're born in the city, will graduate with high school with an associate's degree in a technological field and can go right into a technological job that hopefully will be 80, 90, 100, 120,000. So that's what we've done on the tech side. On the healthcare side, we have, we're a state that has a pretty good comprehensive healthcare system with Medicare, obviously for the elderly, and Medicaid for the poor. We have one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. And I'm a big proponent of health tech, both on the managed care side and also on the pharmaceutical side, right, on the science side. And I love to be able to develop that kind of an ecosystem here so we can be a leader in the country on health tech as a means of providing better health care, faster and easier and less expensive for our residents, but really for the country, because healthcare is fairly ubiquitous.